Across the dimly lit street, beneath the flickering glow of a broken street lamp, a young girl knelt beside an elderly man, her hands moving rapidly, her face focused, her eyes filled with urgency. But what caught his attention wasn't just the act. It was what she was doing. She was signing. Fluently. Desperately. Trying to communicate with a man who clearly couldn't hear, just like him. What happened next would change his life forever. The city never slept, but it rarely cared. Every morning before sunrise, while the streets were still quiet and the air carried the faint chill of the night, 12-year-old Amara was already awake. Not because she wanted to be, but because she had to be. Her home was a one-room structure tucked behind a row of abandoned shops, its walls cracked, its roof patched together with rusted metal sheets that rattled whenever the wind grew strong. Inside, a thin mattress lay on the floor beside a small wooden table cluttered with empty bottles, scraps of paper, and a single flickering lantern. Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, carefully tying worn-out laces on a pair of oversized sneakers someone had once donated to her. They didn't fit. But they were all she had. Behind her, her younger brother, Tund, coughed softly in his sleep. Amara paused. She turned, watching him closely. His chest rose and fell unevenly, his breathing shallow. A small cloth rested on his forehead, damp from the fever that had refused to leave for days. She reached over and gently adjusted it. Her fingers lingered there for a moment. Then she whispered, almost like a promise. Just a little longer. I'll fix everything. But there was something about Amara that most people didn't notice at first glance. She didn't speak much. Not because she was shy. But because she didn't need to. Her hands told stories. Her eyes carried emotion. And her silence was filled with meaning. Amara had learned sign language at the age of 7, from an old woman who used to sit near the market. The woman had been deaf, isolated, and ignored by almost everyone. Except Amara. While others passed by without a second glance, Amara had stopped. Watched. Learned. And over time, she became the old woman's voice. That woman was gone now. But what she taught Amara stayed. Every day, Amara walked miles into the city center with a small tray hanging from her neck, filled with sachets of water and cheap snacks she sold to passing commuters. She didn't beg. She worked. And she worked hard. At traffic stops, she moved swiftly between cars, offering water with a polite nod, sometimes signing simple gestures to drivers who didn't understand, but appreciated the effort. Some ignored her. Some waved her away. But some smiled. And those small smiles were enough to keep her going. Because every coin she earned had a purpose. Medicine. Food. Hope. On the other side of the city, life looked very different. Inside a towering glass building that reflected the rising sun, Adrian Cole sat alone in his office. A man worth millions. A man respected by many. A man completely disconnected from the world around him. Adrian was deaf. Not by birth. But by loss. A tragic accident years ago had taken his hearing, and with it, something far more important. His connection to people. Since then, his world had become quiet. Controlled. Predictable. Meetings were conducted through assistants. Conversations were filtered through screens. And emotions were kept at a distance. He had built walls, stronger than the ones around his company. Because silence, to him, wasn't just the absence of sound. It was safety. Yet despite all his success, something lingered deep within him. A void. A sense that something was missing, but he didn't know what. Or maybe he didn't want to know. That evening, everything began to change. Amara had stayed out later than usual. Tund's fever had worsened, and the local clinic demanded payment before they would even look at him. She had no choice but to keep working until she earned enough. The streets grew darker. Shadows stretched longer. And the city became less forgiving. As she hurried along the roadside, clutching her nearly empty tray, she noticed a small crowd forming ahead. People stood in a loose circle, watching, whispering, but doing nothing. Amara slowed down. Something felt wrong. She pushed her way through the crowd, and what she saw made her heart race. An elderly man sat on the ground, his back against a wall, his face pale and strained. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His hands trembled, trying to form signs. But no one understood him. No one responded. They just watched. Helpless. Detached. Amara didn't hesitate. She dropped her tray. Knees hitting the ground, she leaned in close, her eyes locking onto his. Her hands began to move. Quick. Precise. "Are you okay?" she signed. The man's eyes widened. Relief flooded his face. Finally. Someone understood. He signed back weakly, explaining that he couldn't breathe properly, that he had lost his medication, that he was scared. Amara nodded, her expression firm. "You're not alone," she signed. Then she turned to the crowd, her movements urgent now, trying to get their attention, gesturing for help. Most didn't understand. Some looked confused. Others simply walked away. But she didn't stop. She refused to stop. And that's when Adrian saw her. He had just stepped out of his car, his driver waiting nearby, when the scene caught his attention. At first, it was just another street incident. Something he would normally ignore. But then, he saw her hands. Moving. Speaking a language he knew too well. Sign language. Fluent. Confident. Alive. Adrian's steps slowed. For the first time in years, something pulled him in. Something broke through the silence he had built around himself. He watched as the girl, this small, fragile girl, did what no one else could do. She connected. She understood. She cared. And in that moment, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Curiosity. Amara turned back to the old man, her face tense. She needed help. Real help. Fast. Her eyes scanned the street. And then, they met his. For a brief moment, everything seemed to pause. Two completely different worlds. Colliding in silence. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he had. But she saw something in his eyes. Something familiar. Without hesitation, she stood and ran toward him. Her hands moved as she reached him. "Please, you understand me, don't you? He needs help." Adrian stared at her. At her hands. At her urgency. At her courage. And for the first time in years, he responded. "Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them." For a moment, Adrian didn't move. The world around him blurred, the passing cars, the murmuring crowd, the restless energy of the city. None of it mattered. All he could see was her. A small girl, standing in front of him, breathing fast, her hands trembling slightly, but still moving with urgency, forming words in a language he thought he had left behind. "Please, you understand me, don't you? He needs help." Adrian's chest tightened. It had been years since anyone had spoken to him like that, not through an assistant, not through a screen, but directly, human to human. He swallowed. Then slowly, deliberately, he raised his hands. "Yes," he signed. Amara's eyes widened with relief. She didn't smile. There was no time for that. Instead, she grabbed his hand, firmly, without hesitation, and pulled him toward the old man. "Come quickly." And surprisingly, Adrian followed. The old man's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow now, his body slumped slightly to one side. His fingers still tried to move, but the strength in them was fading. Amara dropped back to her knees beside him. "I found someone," she signed quickly. "He understands." The old man looked up at Adrian, desperation flickering in his tired eyes. Adrian knelt down. For a split second, something unfamiliar washed over him. Discomfort. Not because of the man, but because of the situation. He wasn't used to this. Not anymore. He was used to boardrooms, contracts, controlled environments where everything had order and distance. This was raw. Unpredictable. Real. But then, he saw the fear in the old man's eyes. And something shifted. Adrian leaned closer and signed gently. "What do you need?" The old man struggled, but managed to respond. "My medication, it's in my bag. I dropped it. I can't find it." Amara immediately began searching the ground, scanning every inch around them. The small crowd had thinned now. As always, curiosity had an expiration time. Soon, it would just be the three of them. Alone. Adrian glanced around, his sharp, observant mind kicking in. There. A worn leather bag lay a few feet away, half hidden near the curb. He moved quickly, grabbing it and opening it. Inside, among a few personal items, he found a small bottle of pills. He didn't hesitate. He handed it to Amara. She quickly checked the label, then helped the old man sit up slightly, carefully placing a pill in his mouth and guiding him to take a sip of water from her tray. They waited. Seconds felt like minutes. Then, slowly, the man's breathing steadied. His shoulders relaxed. And the tension in his face softened. Relief. It washed over all of them at once. Amara exhaled deeply, her shoulders dropping as she sat back. Adrian just watched. Something about the moment stayed with him. Not the act itself, but the way she did it. With care. With urgency. With heart. "Thank you," the old man signed weakly, looking between them. Amara smiled gently and shook her head. "You're okay now," she signed. "That's what matters." Adrian studied her. Most people, in her situation, would have asked for something. Money. Recognition. Anything. But she didn't. She simply helped. And that unsettled him. In a way he couldn't explain. After a few minutes, the old man was strong enough to stand with assistance. Adrian signaled to his driver, who had been watching from a distance. Within moments, the car pulled up. Amara stepped back, unsure now. Her role was done. Adrian turned to her. "Let us take him to the hospital," he signed. She nodded immediately. "Yes. Please." They helped the old man into the car. Just before the door closed, he reached out and lightly touched Amara's hand. A silent blessing. A thank you deeper than words. Then he was gone. The car disappeared into the night. And suddenly, it was just the two of them. Standing under that same flickering streetlight. Silence. But not the empty kind. This one was different. Alive. Filled with unspoken questions. Adrian looked at her again. Really looked this time. Her clothes were worn. Her shoes too big. Her hands, slightly rough from work. And yet, there was strength there. A quiet resilience. "What is your name?" he signed. "Amara," she replied. He nodded. "Adrian." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You're deaf," she signed. It wasn't a question. He nodded. Yes. There was no pity in her eyes. No awkwardness. Just understanding. And that alone made something inside him shift again. "Where did you learn to sign like that?" he asked. Amara hesitated. Then her hands moved slower this time. "I had a friend," she signed. She couldn't hear. No one talked to her. "So. I learned." Adrian felt that. Deeply. More than he expected. "And you?" she asked. "How long have you been deaf?" He paused. The question lingered. "Years," he signed finally. She nodded. No follow-up questions. No digging. She respected the silence. And somehow, that meant more than curiosity ever could. A cold breeze passed through. Amara suddenly remembered. Tunned. Her eyes widened slightly. She had stayed too long. Without another word, she quickly turned to gather her tray from the ground, brushing off the dust, checking what little was left. Adrian watched her. "You should be home," he signed. She nodded quickly. "My brother is sick," she replied. "I need to go." Something in the way she said it. It wasn't a complaint. It was responsibility. Heavy. Unavoidable. Adrian reached into his coat. He pulled out his wallet. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he stepped forward and held out some money toward her. "A small help," he signed. Amara looked at it. Then back at him. Her expression didn't change. Slowly, she shook her head. "I didn't help for money," she signed. Adrian blinked. Caught off guard. "I know," he replied. "This is not payment. Just help." She hesitated again. This time longer. Then finally, she accepted it. But not the way he expected. She took only a small portion. Leaving the rest in his hand. "This is enough," she signed. And just like that. She turned and began to walk away. Adrian stood there. Still. Watching her disappear into the night. No demands. No expectations. No attempt to take advantage of the moment. Just dignity. Just enough. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt something unfamiliar rise within him. Respect. As he got into his car, his mind didn't return to business. Or meetings. Or schedules. It stayed, with her. With Amara. A girl who had nothing. Yet somehow, gave everything. Adrian didn't sleep that night. It wasn't unusual for him to stay awake late, his world often stretched into long, silent hours filled with work, numbers, and strategy. But this was different. This time, his mind refused to return to business. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Amara. Her hands moving with urgency. Her eyes filled with determination. The way she refused money, but accepted just enough. That detail stayed with him the most. Just enough. In a world where people always wanted more, she only took what she needed. And that, unsettled him. The next morning, Adrian sat in his office, staring at a document on his screen. Unread. Unprocessed. His assistant stood nearby, waiting patiently for instructions. But Adrian wasn't paying attention. Instead, he reached for a notepad and wrote a short message. "Find the girl from last night." His assistant raised an eyebrow, surprised. Adrian didn't make requests like this. Ever. Still, she nodded. "I'll try," she said. Meanwhile, across the city. Amara's morning began the same way it always did. Too early. Too heavy. Tun's condition hadn't improved. If anything, it had gotten worse. His fever burned hotter now, his body weaker. Amara sat beside him, gently wiping his forehead, her movements slower than usual. Worry had begun to settle in her chest. Not the loud, panicked kind, but the quiet, dangerous kind. The kind that whispers, "What if?" She shook the thought away. She couldn't afford fear. Not now. Not when he needed her. "I'll be back soon," she signed softly, even though he was too weak to respond. Then she stood, picked up her tray, and stepped out into the day. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The streets grew louder. And just like before, Amara worked. But something was different. She was distracted. Her movements slower. Her focus split between survival and worry. Every coin she earned felt too small. Every passing moment felt too fast. By midday, Adrian's assistant returned. "I found her." Adrian looked up immediately. "There's a girl matching your description. She sells water near the central traffic junction. Locals say she's there almost every day." Adrian didn't hesitate. He stood, grabbed his coat, and left. The traffic junction was chaos. Cars honking. Vendors shouting. People rushing in every direction. But even in the middle of all that noise, Adrian found her. Easily. Because she didn't move like everyone else. She moved with purpose. With rhythm. Weaving between cars, offering water, nodding politely, signing occasionally to those who looked confused. Adrian watched from a distance for a moment. Observing. Understanding. And then he stepped forward. Amara was handing a sachet of water to a driver when she felt it. A presence. Familiar. She turned. And there he was. Adrian. Standing just a few feet away. Her eyes widened slightly. Not in shock. But in recognition. "You came back," she signed. He nodded. "Yes." There was a brief pause. Then she asked. "Why?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was, he didn't fully know. But he felt it. "I wanted to see you," he signed. Simple. Honest. Amara studied him for a moment. Then nodded. As if that was enough. "Your brother," Adrian signed. "You said he was sick." Amara's expression changed instantly. The strength in her posture softened. "Yes," she signed. "He's getting worse." Adrian felt that shift. The quiet fear behind her words. "Has he seen a doctor?" She hesitated. Then shook her head. "No money." "Of course." Adrian exhaled slowly. Then signed. "Let me help." Amara's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger. But in caution. "Why?" she asked again. This time, the question carried more weight. More meaning. Adrian held her gaze. Then signed carefully. "Because someone helped me once, when I needed it." It wasn't entirely true. But it wasn't entirely false either. Because in that moment last night, she had helped him. More than she knew. Amara looked down. Thinking. Weighing. Trust didn't come easily. Not in her world. But something about him felt different. Not because he had money. But because he understood her language. Her silence. Her world. Finally, she nodded. Okay. That afternoon, everything began to change. For the first time in weeks, Tund was taken to a real hospital. Not turned away. Not ignored. But treated. Adrian handled everything. The tests. The medication. The care. Amara stayed by Tun's side the entire time, watching closely, her heart caught between fear and hope. Hours later, the doctor approached them. "He'll be okay," he said. "Severe infection, but we caught it in time." Amara didn't react immediately. She just stood there, processing. Then slowly, her knees gave way, and she sat down, covering her face as silent tears fell through her fingers. Relief. Pure. Overwhelming. Adrian stood nearby, watching. And for the first time in years, he felt something break inside him. A wall. A distance. Something he had built to protect himself. Now, slowly coming down. Days turned into weeks. And something unexpected began to grow. A connection. Not forced. Not rushed. But steady. Real. Adrian visited often. At first, it was about Tun's recovery. But soon, it became more. He started bringing books. Not expensive ones. But meaningful ones. Picture books. Sign language guides. Learning tools. And Amara absorbed everything. Her hunger to learn was undeniable. Unstoppable. They spent hours communicating. Sometimes about simple things. Sometimes about deeper ones. And slowly, Amara began to open up. She told him about her parents. Gone too soon. About the old woman who taught her sign language. About the streets. The struggles. The nights she went hungry so Tun could eat. And Adrian listened. Really listened. Not just with his eyes. But with something deeper. But not everyone saw it as something good. Whispers began. People noticed. A wealthy man. Spending time with a poor street girl. Questions turned into assumptions. Assumptions turned into judgment. Why is he helping her? What does he want? This doesn't make sense. Even Adrian's business associates began to question him. His assistant approached him one evening. "Sir, people are talking." Adrian looked at her. Unbothered. Let them. But the real obstacle came, unexpectedly. One afternoon, as Adrian arrived at the small place Amara called home, he noticed something wrong. The door was open. Too open. Inside, things were scattered. Moved. Disturbed. Amara stood in the corner, holding Tun tightly. Her face pale. Her hands shaking. Adrian stepped closer. "What happened?" he signed quickly. Amara looked at him. Fear filled her eyes. "They came," she signed. "Who?" She swallowed. "Men, they said we can't stay here anymore. That this place is not ours." Adrian's expression darkened. "Where will you go?" Amara shook her head. "I don't know." And in that moment, the reality hit hard. Helping her once was easy. Helping her truly was something else entirely. This wasn't just about kindness anymore. This was about commitment. Responsibility. Change. Adrian stood there. Silent. Thinking. Because now, everything was about to be tested. For the first time in a long while, Adrian felt pressure. Not the kind that came from business deals or high-stakes negotiations. This was different. This mattered. Amara stood in the corner, holding Tun tightly, her small frame trying to be strong enough for both of them. The room, if it could even be called that, looked like it had been turned upside down. Their few belongings scattered. Their sense of safety, shattered. "They said we have to leave by tomorrow," she signed slowly. Her hands, usually steady, trembled slightly. Adrian's jaw tightened. He had seen injustice before. He had funded programs, signed donations, built things that looked like impact. But this was right in front of him. Real. Immediate. Unavoidable. And for once, writing a check wasn't going to be enough. "Pack what you need," Adrian signed. Amara blinked. Confused. "What do you mean?" "You're coming with me." She froze. Not because she didn't understand, but because she did. And it scared her. "No," she signed quickly, shaking her head. "We can't, we don't belong there." Adrian stepped closer. His expression calm. Firm. "You belong somewhere safe," he signed. "That's all that matters." Amara looked down. Her grip around Tun tightened. Every instinct in her told her to be careful. To not trust too easily. But another part of her. The part that had seen him show up again and again. The part that had watched him care without asking for anything. That part whispered something different. Slowly. She nodded. That night changed everything. For the first time in years, Amara and Tun slept under a roof that didn't leak. A room that was quiet. Clean. Safe. But safety felt unfamiliar. Amara barely slept. She sat by the window most of the night, watching the city lights, her thoughts racing. What if this doesn't last? What if this disappears too? Across the hall, Adrian stood in his own room, staring at the wall. He wasn't used to this either. His life had always been controlled. Predictable. But now, everything felt different. And strangely, he didn't want it to go back. The next few weeks became a turning point. Adrian didn't just provide shelter. He took action. Real action. He contacted lawyers to deal with the illegal eviction. He arranged proper medical follow-ups for Tund. But more importantly, he focused on Amara. Her future. "You should be in school," he signed one afternoon. Amara hesitated. "I can't," she replied. "I have to work." "You don't anymore." She shook her head. "You don't understand. If I don't work, we don't eat." Adrian paused. Then signed something that changed everything. "You're not alone anymore." The words hung in the air. Heavy. Powerful. Amara looked at him. Really looked this time. And for the first time, she believed him. Enrolling Amara in school wasn't easy. There were documents she didn't have. Records that didn't exist. Proof of identity that had been lost long ago. Barriers. Systems that weren't built for someone like her. But Adrian didn't back down. He pushed. Relentlessly. And slowly. Doors opened. The first day of school was the hardest. Amara stood at the gate, her hands gripping the straps of her new bag tightly. The uniform felt strange. The environment, overwhelming. Students laughed. Talked. Connected in ways she wasn't used to. For a moment, she felt small again. Out of place. Adrian stood beside her. "You can do this," he signed. She swallowed. "What if I don't fit in?" He looked at her carefully. Then signed. "You don't need to fit in. You just need to be yourself." Amara nodded slowly. Then took a step forward. Days turned into months. And something incredible began to happen. Amara didn't just adjust. She thrived. Her intelligence, once hidden by circumstance, began to shine. Her ability to communicate through sign language became something unique, something powerful. Teachers noticed. Students became curious. Some even started learning from her. For the first time in her life, Amara wasn't invisible. She was seen. Tund recovered fully. His laughter filled the halls of Adrian's home, something that once felt empty now carried warmth. And Adrian changed. Completely. He found himself present. Engaged. Alive in ways he hadn't been for years. The silence that once isolated him now connected him. Because of her. But the most powerful moment came 1 year later. At a school event. A large hall filled with parents, teachers, and students. On stage stood Amara. Confident. Poised. No longer the girl who ran between cars just to survive. Now. She stood with purpose. She raised her hands. And began to sign. A speech. About kindness. About being seen. About how one moment, one person, can change everything. An interpreter spoke her words aloud for the audience. There was a time when I thought the world didn't see people like me, her message began. But I was wrong. She paused. Her eyes scanning the crowd. Until they landed on him. Adrian. Sitting in the front row. Watching. Proud. Emotional. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to stop, to listen, to care, even without words. Her hands moved with grace. With one act of kindness, my life changed. Silence filled the room. The kind that holds meaning. Then. Applause. Loud. Unstoppable. After the event, Amara walked toward Adrian. This time. He didn't wait. He stood. And for the first time. He hugged her. Not as a benefactor. Not as a distant figure. But as someone who had become. Family. Full circle moment. Weeks later, back at the same traffic junction where it all began. A different scene unfolded. Amara stood there again. But not selling water. This time. She stood beside a small group of children. Teaching them. Her hands moving just like before. Showing them how to communicate. How to connect. How to understand. And across the street. Adrian watched. A quiet smile on his face. Because now. She was doing what he once saw her do. Helping others. Changing lives. Creating a ripple effect. All from one moment. One choice. One act of kindness. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments.